Welcome to the edTrends Forum entitled An International Response to Education During and Post-COVID-19 in Chile, Finland, and Ghana. 1 year ago today, on April 14th, 2020, we were at the height of the pandemic. According to the UNESCO Institute for Statistics, more than 75% of school children across the world, in excess of 1.3 billion students, were affected by roughly 137 countrywide school closures on that day. Today, a year later, April 14th, 2021, the pandemic is still with us. It currently affects more than 177 million learners in primary and secondary schools worldwide, or about 10% of total enrolled learners. And there are still, to our knowledge, 19 countrywide school closures. The result is a world of rapidly planned experiments in education and public policy put together to meet the demands of the first emergency of global scope of the 21st century. It will take time and resources to fully assess the results of these various experiments, most often conducted on national scale, overnight, without piloting or previous testing. The event we participate in today is one such experiment, an effort by the Academy for the Advancement of Teaching, Leadership, and Schools at the School of Education at the University of Albany to promote conversation and disseminate knowledge and best practices, attracting participants not only from across the United States, but from as many as 30 other countries. As the Senior International Officer for the University of Albany, and as a scholar of comparative and international education myself, I'm very pleased to welcome you to this important conversation on lessons learned from the great national experiments in Chile, Finland, and Ghana, as we begin important assessments of what worked and what did not, and think about the implications for how we will manage global or national scale crises in the future. I thank you all for attending and contributing to the success of this forum. And I especially would like to thank our panelists and our partners at Cognia and the Lastinger Center for Learning at the University of Florida. I wish everyone a very fruitful discussion and a successful forum. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Valverde. Diana?
Yes, good morning. Again, thank you to our partners in this discussion this morning. And we came together about a year ago or so to look and bring education leaders together to take a closer look at current trends in our work. And we are thrilled to gain the international perspective today as we speak to other educational leaders from Ghana, Finland, and Chile. The agenda today, we will ask each of our panelists to share what is happening in their regions as a response to COVID-19. Interesting to note is in that some parts of the world, they are beginning their second full school year under restrictions, while other areas are ending out a school year. We hope to learn from each other and have a dialogue that may expand your thinking on what is happening today around the world. We're going to start today by allowing our panelists to introduce themselves and get that opportunity to go through that discussion with them and learn a little bit more about each of our panelists. And then we'll be going into some questions that our panelists will be happy to share with us what's happening in their areas. So Mario, if we could start with you as an introduction.
Thank you very much, Carmen, and thank you all for the opportunity to be with you and share our experiences about this COVID year a bit more. And also, I'm very privileged to be today with you to learn more and to know more what is happening all around. I'm Marja Kyllönen, and I'm coming from from Finland, obviously, and from the city of Helsinki. I'm, as it stated in this slide, so I'm the head for Education Development Service Unit, and our division, education division, we are responsible for offering education services from the early childhood up to adult training. And those who are not that familiar with the Finnish education system, so in Finland, it's the local authorities, the local government that distributes or provides the education services, and specifically when it comes to the basic education. So we, the city of Helsinki, we are the biggest education provider in the whole country in Finland. And we are having approximately almost 200,000 people attending to our services on daily basis, and 14,000 professionals, mainly teachers and of course principals, working in our organization, in our units in schools and preschool and early childhood education centers. I have PhD in education, and my kind of topic and interest was and still is future school and leadership, and what is the role of the school and education systems to build up sustainable and successful future for ourselves and the community and for the globe's well-being. And this is something that I'm constantly working on and also developing with the expert group that I'm leading. We have approximately 60 people in that development service unit. And our concern and what we have been focusing during this past year is what are the competencies needed in the future, and how do we build a sustainable and successful and bright future for our children to face. And that's something that I'm happy to elaborate a bit more later on. Nice to be with you.
Well, thank you so much, Mario. That you've got a lot of work going on. And Mario placed in our chat as well 38 stories about remote learning that you're welcome to take from our chat box as well to learn a little bit more. Let's see here, Carmen. Let's move to Carmen's introduction.
Good morning. Greetings from Concon, Chile. I live in a small village close to the ocean. Unfortunately, it's very cold and cloudy today, so it's not a nice day, but I'm sure being with you is going to make it a very bright day, because it's so important what we're doing of sharing our experiences in supporting schools, supporting families, and supporting children as they struggle with the pandemic and the havoc it has created in everybody's lives. I am a director of the Center for Leadership at the Universidad Católica de Valparaíso in Chile, and I'm also a professor in psychology. And my center really focuses on understanding what are the needs of school leaders, understood broadly in terms of not just the principal, but also all the other teachers that also hold leadership positions, and understanding what they need and how we can best support their growth and development. So over the last year, we've done a number of activities in the area of supporting them address the unexpected problems created by the pandemic. We have webinars, we create resources, and everybody's welcome to use them. They're in Spanish, of course, but I'll put the website on the chat, so if you're interested, you can download some of our materials. Very pleased to be here, and really looking forward to learning a lot. Thank you very much, Diana and the University of Albany, for inviting us.
Thank you, Carmen, and I'm really looking forward to hearing about more of that research as well. Sam.
Hello, Diane. Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. For those of you in the US, it's still morning. Yes, it's a privilege to be here with you. And unlike Carmen, we are still in summer. It's summer 365 days in Ghana. So you can come and enjoy some of our summer. Yes, so I am Samuel Amponsa with the Premier University of Ghana, the Premier University in Ghana called the University of Ghana, and currently the acting head of the Distance Education Department. And knowing our background, I mean, we have had our own challenges with the COVID-19, but it's also opened up opportunities for us to move every engagement online. And that's how come the university generally was able to graduate students virtually in June 2020. I'm personally involved in some research in view of COVID-19, and there's been some research around the country too that I'll share this raw. So I think I'll have more to say as we progress. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you, Sam. We appreciate that. So as we move forward, Jerry, do you have another slide with some of the questions that we have? Thank you. We're going to start this morning with Carmen, and then we'll take turns and rotate through each of our panelists. And our first part of discussion today is really centers around how those decisions were made about COVID response and how were they guided. And our panelists are going to be sharing with you some of the challenges that they've experienced in their regions and how they've expanded this access to reach all learners as they quickly went to some sort of remote type of learning. And it's different for each one of our countries that we're talking to today. And what were some unexpected positive outcomes that happened? Carmen, if you could share that with us, that we would love to hear it.
Okay, I think one of the things that's important to know that in Chile, school year goes from March through December, and March 2020 was when schools shut down, and we have not reopened them. There was an effort to reopen them at the beginning of March 2021, but it was short-lived because we had a spike in cases, and now over 90% of the country is in lockdown. So everybody's still at school, at home, working and learning remotely. Last year, we did a survey with, can you see my screen?
We can see, it's not really in a presentation mode. We can see your slides on the side.
But now
there
you
go.
See, okay, good.
Yes.
So last year, we did a couple of studies trying to understand, again, what were the needs of the school system and how we could support them. So we did a parent survey, and in one region of the country, we got over 6,000 responses. And we also did a principal survey with my other institutions. And from those two studies, we learned a couple of things that I think are important. First, we asked parents how their kids were experiencing the remote learning. And the first piece that we need to keep in mind is about 7% of the parents reported that at least one of their pupils was not in school anymore. So we're talking about 6,000 parents plus, and that's a high number. And the parents were saying that they felt that their kids needed more support from the teachers. And basically, what we learned from this is that kids were not self-regulated learners. So if they were left alone to do work, it was very hard for them. But also, on the positive side, that kids were learning at things that were of their own interest. So their learning was not just remoted to academics, but also they were expanding and had more opportunity to learn things that they were interested. There was also a need for more psychological support. So the parents were seeing that their kids were really struggling with well-being, and they expected the school to provide that kind of service. And in Chile, today, most schools have psychologists and social workers that support teachers and address this issue of well-being. Few parents said that kids had learned a lot, almost 30% said that they recognized that kids were actually learning. But also at that point, kids did not want to go back to face-to-school learning because there was still a lot of virus going on in the community. So when we asked parents, how are your children communicating? 41% said that the children were communicating to school with schoolwork through computers, 51% through cell phones, and 8% had no devices. And 68% of the families were funding this connectivity and devices. 26% were getting some support from school, and 6% were totally dependent on the funding that the school was providing to develop this kind of connectivity. So when we compare children who were with different types of connectivity, what we see is that it was more likely that students would have not be in school or report abandon, dropping out of school if they had poor connectivity. So for example, only 6% of the families that did not have connectivity said that one of their kids dropped out, and 19% of the parents that had no connectivity said that their kids had dropped out. So we see that access is a key issue in terms of kids being able to remain in school. And when we ask more of a participation, those who have computers, 72% said that their kids always are in class when there's a class session online, but those who do not have connectivity, only 20% were able to be present. They go to other community services, or they do find resources outside the home. 20% of the parents said that the kids with computers or cell phones had low motivation. That was about 1 in 3 of the kids without connectivity had low motivation, and the same thing with emotional problems. So we see that the lack of connectivity is very important in terms not only of well-being if they're continuing education, but also it's a big factor in explaining why kids are dropping out. The data right now in Chile is that 40,000 students were lost. Now the schools have not been able to, and when we ask why do kids leave school, 51% of the parents attribute it to children's or students' characteristics, like they lack motivation, they did not understand the assignments or had some difficulties. 26% said that they, as parents or guardians, did not have the resources to support their kids, either because they were working or because they didn't have the knowledge to help them with homework. And 23% said that it was lack of internet access. But sometimes this had to do with, even if they had the computer at home or the connectivity, there were 3 or 4 siblings that had to share the same computer, and therefore they had to take turns in attending classes. And only 12% said that they thought that the kid left because the quality of instruction they were getting from the school was not good enough. And so when we ask parents, how much they had been impacted as a family by COVID, again, we see a difference between those who reported children leaving the school versus those who reported their children remaining in school. And we find, for example, that 48%, almost 50% of the parents that reported that they had experienced major mental health issues are also reported that their kid had left, and that only reported by 25% of those who had remained in school. And the same thing with those families that had lost income or had some unemployment issues. Also, we see a higher percentage of them with children leaving the school. So when we look at the challenges, we see that a major challenge for families is connectivity and the availability of parents to support in-home instruction. When we ask the principals, what was their experiences, they say that the main concern is, again, the access so students can continue remote learning. And also they could see that the students were experiencing a lot of issues with social well-being. So we see a lot of parallels between what parents were reporting and what principals were reporting. The main obstacle was connectivity, and they identify about 35% of the students showed decreased motivation, so it was hard for them to participate in school. And again, we find that in this group of principals, which is a very different group from the parents, about also 7% report that about 7% of their students have been lost. They couldn't contact them. And as I said, nationally, there are 40,000 students who have dropped out. But as one of the questions asked, what are the positives that come out of this? And the principal said that the negative is the learning loss, of course, that inequalities have increased, and that there's a big concern with dropout. But they also see some positive transformation. For example, they see that students are gaining greater autonomy, that students are now valuing more going to school and face-to-face classes, And the teachers are learning new skills, that the teachers are also recognizing that they have to pay more attention to students' well-being. And teachers have shown flexibility and greater capacity for innovations, and they also see families that are more committed to the schooling of their children. From a policy perspective, they value the fact that the government has included more flexibility in terms of, for example, the accountability retirements. For the second year now, we do not have high-stake assessments because the 2019 high-stake assessment had to be postponed because there was social unrest, and also that they have more autonomy to use different kinds of funding and resources. So that's sort of a positive. But they also think that the government should do more in terms of supporting access to technology and connectivity. Also, there's a concern with students' access to food because a lot of parents have very precarious jobs, and access to mental health services. They feel that as schools need to increase the amount of vacation because teachers and students too also are very tired from all these adaptations. Teachers need more specialized training. And the majority support that there was automatic promotion, so nobody was retained. Really, there were no grades given to make decisions about retention. Everybody was promoted. And at the time, nobody wanted to go back to school. And so that has been sort of a major policy issue here in Chile, is that the government has really attempted to get kids back in school, but there's been a tremendous resistance from parents and from teachers. So there was a short opening, and it was really not well received by parents or by teachers. So that would be sort of my answer to your first question, Dan.
Yeah, thank you so much, Carmen. And I find it so fascinating that so many of the same struggles that you're having in Chile are the same really around the world, especially that mental health, social, emotional piece for not only our students but our teachers and other faculty too.
Exactly.
So thank you for sharing that information. It's so valid for everyone to see. Sam, we'll move on to you and see what you can share about what's happening in Ghana.
Right. Thank you so much. And thanks to Carmen for starting the ball rolling. So basically, I'm to talk about the decisions, the challenges, and the surprises. I guess I'm right.
You could go right ahead, Sam.
Right. So I'll start with the decision issues, and I'll start at the national level. In March 2020, Ghana experienced the first 2 cases of COVID-19, and by April, we are almost at 400. So the government, as was advised by the Commonwealth of Learning and other UNESCO, the government had to shut down schools and bring about these social distancing protocols to forestall the exacerbation of the pandemic. And so schools had to be halted, students had to be moved home. And as we know, UNESCO stated that about 90% of school children were out of school around that time. The case in Ghana was not different. And this was actually as a result of an executive instrument 164 of 2020. Now to schools, many schools really in Ghana struggled, but I'll speak for my university. We had to quickly train lecturers, because obviously some had never used the learning management system. Some were still very conventional using the brick and mortar. But our pro-vice chancellor for academic and student affairs issued a policy statement. And by that, our UGCS, that's the University of Ghana Computing Systems, trained all lecturers in the university to be able to move online. The shift, the learning curve was really, really sharp, because you could imagine people who had never used the learning management system, who had not used any form of technology, moving straight within that short time. But then the whole issue about the pandemic was so swift. And I remember reading the Commonwealth of Learning document and I laughed, but that was the reality, that there was no time for planning. There was only time for implementation. And so we couldn't wait for anybody. And the university trained people, and that also brought about a shift in our assessment policy. With that policy to move online, traditionally, University of Ghana had been, for the undergraduate level, has been having 30% for IA and then 70% exams. But with that policy came another shift to do continuous assessments between 50 and 70, and then the remaining was left for examination. But some way, somehow, examinations had to be done in person because we didn't have the procuring devices to monitor students' exams online. So we had to bring students in batches to come and write exams. And so by July of 2020, University of Ghana was the first to virtually graduate students during that difficult period. And then back to the national, we have terminal points, the junior high school, the senior high school, those are pre-tertiary levels. The government again issued a statement that only third year students, that's the finalists for senior high school, should go to school and complete their what we call West African certificate examination. And then after that, those at the junior high school also went. And when the pandemic seemed to have come down, the other levels will need to go to school. So these were decision issues. With the challenges, they are enormous. Though we prevail, but they are enormous. Some we know. I mean, we are in the global south, so we know technology is an issue. We know people have not been trained, as I've mentioned. And if you read a documentary that Fatima did for Al Jazeera around 2020, in March 2020, you understand that there are students, even in tertiary education, who do not have basic technological gadgets to access distance or online learning. Because the government, as a result, also initiated what we call the GLT, the Ghana Learning Television. So most of the learning at the tertiary level was happening on TV 24/7 at different levels. And some private TV stations also took that up. But the issue is, per that documentary, you have students in the rural areas, suburban areas, who don't even have televisions to access these learning. So there was learning loss, and there was the issue of data costs. People could not afford. One of the things my university, the University of Ghana, did was to arrange with the two leading telcos in Ghana, that is MTN and Vodafone, to give students and lecturers 5 gigabytes of data every month. And then they also zero-rated everything that was done on the Sakai learning management system that we use. Unfortunately, virtual conferencing was not inclusive. So while many instructors had moved to the use of Zoom and Teams, students had to get data to be able to part on virtual streaming sessions. And that was a huge cost. And then the internet downtime and all that. So these were major challenges. And then we had people who also, up to now, don't really believe that COVID really exists. Up to now, people really don't believe. So when students came to write exams, sometimes you see them, no social distancing, but if you go close to them, you are risking yourself, so you have to stand somewhere and watch. So these were challenges that came with the COVID-19 and education. And the surprise is equally as huge as the effects of the disease itself. Because, we could look at most of the negatives as surprises, but I'll rather look at the positive sides. Because we have people who call themselves BBCs. BBC is not in British Broadcasting Corporation, but born before computers. People who have tagged themselves are born before computers. Some are students. We have different cohorts of students. With the distance education, you have very old students who tag themselves to BBC and they don't have anything to do with technology, but they were impelled, just like some lecturers in the older age category, the late laggers, who were also impelled. So I will look at the surprise as everybody, either by their own volition or impelled to use the technology. And because of that, we've done one stream. From February, level 100s and 400s came. They left 2 weeks ago, successfully finished exams. As we speak now, we have level 200s and level 300s in school. And then for the graduate stream, it's running regular. For distance education students, we are starting our end of semester exams this coming weekend. We just virtually trained those we call mature students. Mature entrance exams is for people above 25 years who don't have the requisite qualifications to enter university. So we run classes for them. They write entrance exams, and based on the grade point they get, we either give them degree through DE or diploma. Last year, we had to move them online. This year, we trained them this weekend virtually, and they are starting classes this coming weekend for 8 weeks. So these are very positive surprises that have come with the COVID-19.
Those sure are, Sam, and we appreciate you sharing the positive, because everyone likes to hear those as well. Mario, let's go ahead and move on to you as well, and if you could share some of those responses that you've used within Finland to kind of guide how you've handled the COVID crisis and some of those challenges and positive things as well.
Yes, it was great to hear Carmen and Sam to tell about the challenges and also the surprises, because they are astonishingly similar to although the environment or the circumstances, we flipped into the remote mode a year ago, a bit more than a year ago. So we're different, but still the effects are kind of similar. In Finland, we kind of switched to remote learning very quickly in 2 nights' time in the mid of March 2020. And majority of even our early childhood children were at home, and the parents workers were told to be at home if possible. So the change was very rapid, and our concern, and for the education services, our concern was, how can we reach all the pupils? And those, as you, Carmen, reflected, so those who had already had problems with their regular school attendance, so how can we reach them when they go remote? And also the other concern was that what is the ability of our teachers to turn suddenly, what are the ICT skills to kind of execute good quality education just in 2 nights' time. And so in Finland, we have had this kind of technology for learning. We had a great, huge program, Finland for Technology, in the mid-1990s, and the infrastructure was very good, and the equipment of kind of a level of our schools were excellent when we turned to remote learning. Every teacher have their own laptop, and there were sufficient laptops also to offer to those kids who didn't have a device at home. So it was not the question of infrastructure or devices, but it was the question that how to use these devices and learning platforms in a way that it kind of promotes children learning, and specifically how to connect to each and other when you are not physically at present. And yes, that was our concern, and our surprise was how the professionals, our teachers, were, how committed they. I know that they are, but it still surprised me how they really wanted, they struggled their way through this kind of fears to use the digital platforms. And even I met one teacher, and she said, I've never used these computers, and it was totally new to me, and I was so afraid. And I'm over 50, and now with the help of my younger colleague, I managed to find out my way, and now I'm really thrilled. I've learned so much. So that was a good experience, that our teachers were brave enough to try to set the kind of to continue in remote learning mode. And also the other very important lesson we learned, and we certainly want to keep it with us, is how much the co-teaching and collaboration of the teachers helped all the teachers to have these remote classes and learning. And also it was not only inside one school, but also they shared a lot of examples and tools and experiences through social media and different Teams channels and like that. And one example is this, what Diana already mentioned, this 38 stories about remote learning that is available in the chat. So please go and check it, because they are real stories our teachers told. How did they arrange the learning when the change was so sudden and something that no one expected. So this was one success story, and was a concern, and how it turned out to be a success story. The other concern we had is what I said, that how to reach the pupils, and specifically those pupils who didn't have kind of good support from their home. As we all educators, we know that the home and the home conditions and the parents play a crucial role when it comes to learning of the learners. And as said, devices was not the problem, because they could learn from the school if they didn't have it at home. But the concern was their physical, psychological and mental health, and how to reach, because they didn't come to school. So you can't knock even if you're knocking the computer, so no one is listening if they don't open it. So we developed a lot of practices, what to do, and very strict regulation. For example, if the student was not to be reached in one day, so of course immediately we contacted the parents. But then if the parents were not to be reached in 2 days, so then we contacted to the social services, so that we could have someone from there to support and to contact the family and bring the child, even when the schools were closed. So we were able and allowed to invite some of those students that really struggled with the remote learning to come to school and have an hour or so support from the teacher, and that helped a lot. But our teachers, they really worked to reach these pupils that were not reachable and who didn't contact. And also we had our social services was helping us. And in every school we have a school welfare group where there is a school psychology and school counselor, and they also worked hard to get contact to each and everyone. And so in the big picture, I would say that we succeeded well during last spring, and now we have been kind of a hybrid learning mode since the beginning of this term, that was in August 2020. In our basic education, in upper secondary education, that is high school and vocational education, our young ones have been learning remotely almost a year, and that's quite a big thing. I'll come to that later on. But when thinking of our basic education kids, elementary education kids, so we have done surveys and we are monitoring and following regularly. We have statistics about their learning results, and if there's a gap and if the gap has been widened. And also we have been lucky enough that the state of Finland has given us more money to support those that are in the danger or drop out, if not already dropped out, and specifically caused by the COVID. And what we can see now, that those who already had problems with learning, so then the kind of the gap has become wider, and we have according to the questionnaire or the survey we did for our principals, so we have approximately 40% more of the students that are in need of intensive support than before the COVID. So the number is quite high, but luckily we have also got some tools and resources to hire more, for example, for me, teachers, the schools. So that's something that we are really, we are really working on still, and monitoring a lot, and discussing also with our politicians how to support these learners, how to ensure that whatever is there, the gap can be bridged and they can have the support they need. When we asked, we also during the remote session, so we also asked the parents and the pupils how did they feel, how did they, what was their kind of feeling and experience of the remote learning. And majority of the students and the parents said that it was okay, it went well, and the pupils' self-evaluation was as well the teachers that the majority of the kids, they did learn well, and some of them even better than with the face-to-face setting, and that is kind of a thing we learned, a lesson learned. What we want to execute also in the normal situation is that for some kids this kind of remote learning offered a possibility to have more personalized learning paths and more personalized learning tasks. And also for some pupils, we know this also based on the previous researches, that using devices, digital devices, is motivating. It's just one group of the pupils that are not that motivated with the more traditional way of learning, but when they can add a device or some digital devices, so they are more motivated. So that's definitely what we are going to bring out of this COVID experience. The remote learning challenged a lot the families, because specifically a year ago, because as I said, also the parents were working remotely, and the pupils, they needed more support with specifically in the start of the remote learning session. So of course it was something that our parents said that they were more stressed than usually when the kids were at home. And what the kids were missing was, of course, the social interaction and meeting with their friends, and even to meet with the teachers. So in a way, this also taught our children how important school is, not only in terms of academics, but the social growth and well-being. And lastly, our upper secondary students that are from 16 years above. So as they have been now learning remotely almost a year, so what we are seeing currently is that there's an increasing anxiety and stress that they are expressing currently, and luckily next week they can turn to hybrid learning, because even they are that old that they are almost kind of adults, and majority of them are already, they are not minors anymore. So there is a huge need of social interaction and to meet people, to meet face to face and not only remotely. So these are kind of in a nutshell all the what we have experienced, and I can't kind of emphasize enough that the importance of the school as also a place for social interaction and growth, and that's something we learned, and we want to focus also on this in coming months and years.
Yeah, that's fantastic. You can definitely tell your passion for your teachers and your students, and we thank you for sharing that. We're going to go ahead and move on to our second question that has to do with, some of you have touched on in your first one, but you can elaborate a little bit more. What do you imagine and hope for next year? If you've already started, which I think your students have, Sam, later this school year as things improve, what do you hope for those students and what would you change and continue? Sam, we're going to go ahead and start with you.
Okay, right, thank you. Right, with a change, I'll first start with the digital divide. We know there is a huge digital divide, and it's not exclusive to Ghana or Africa, because I ever read last year when I was doing some research on COVID-19 its effects that in a country as wealthy as Canada, there are families that cannot afford Wi-Fi at home. So even during the lockdown, they had to get to the stores to access internet. And that really tells you that it is more profound down here. And so if at this age and time, we have higher education students who don't have television, then one change that I would like to see is that government will work with the corporate entities to make sure that a policy called one student, one computer is fully implemented, because the world is not coming back. Reimagine education beyond COVID-19 clearly tells you that no matter what, things are not going to be the same again. We are either going to do hybrid or we are either going to remain fully online. And therefore, everything should be done to make sure that the digital divide is closed as much as possible. Secondly, literature tells us that when you move online, there's a switch in roles. Teachers do more work than students, unlike the conventional classroom. But based on my experience and studies I have undertaken so far, it looks like the work of instructors, online instructors, quadrupled during this COVID-19. And therefore, there should be policy moves, there should be initiatives that will reduce the workload and the stress that instructors have had to be encumbered with. I mean, working around the clock 24/7, people were just stressed out. And we kind of were working 24/7. I admit our students were also equally stressed, but I think the stress on teachers and instructors were just too much. And when it comes to the technology itself, I think we were not really ready for this change. It was too sudden. So with lessons learned, we should improve upon the kind of technology infrastructure that we have, so that be it hybrid or fully online, we can have smooth delivery and smooth online engagements. And what should continue? Well, I am for online. So what should continue? I will opt for more training for everybody involved in this enterprise, so that the so-called BBCs and the digital immigrants and those the newer generation will all be in this waters. Because we are not just training our students to pass exams, we are training our students to be competitive everywhere they find themselves around the globe. And therefore, going back to the conventional is a big move for me. So I think what should continue is that we should improve upon what we have been able to achieve now and make sure that we deploy technology to deliver content. And that also means that what I read from South Africa, a professor, a college where they will bring the cameras and then just shoot everything and deliver to students. What it means is that lecturers were transposing the conventional classroom to the online setting, which doesn't work. So people should be trained to understand how to adapt technology, how to adapt their curriculum to the online learning space, how to go about assessments, how to engage students, and how to also cater for even the the underprivileged. And I think this also calls for an attitudinal change. in those engaged in the educational enterprise and other stakeholders. So for the complete change is only a wish, wishful thinking. COVID-19 should go away and things should be normalized. But nonetheless, we are not going back to the way we engage our students in the educational enterprise. Thank you so much.
Well, thanks so much, Sam, for that. I appreciate that. Mario, we will go ahead and move on to you as well.
Yeah. Actually, I covered quite a bit in my previous kind of my turn, and what should change. I will what we would be continuing. What is our wishes and my wishes for the coming year. So definitely, as I said, the social well-being of pupils and students, and the social connectiveness and the understanding that school is for more than academic achievements. So that's something that we are definitely going to have that also in our new city strategy. That is just, we are just going to build up our new city strategy by the end of this year. And that will be this well-being, social well-being, psychological well-being, and being together with definitely be some core elements of that strategy. What was mentioned is that our upper secondary, high schools, our vocational children or students, they have been remote learning a lot. And there are good sides on that, because of course now the teachers and also the students have new abilities and competencies to do online learning, and that's something that definitely will continue. So we have also kind of come to know, or it has strengthened our understanding of the importance of face-to-face learning. And what we definitely are going to focus on is also this kind of collaboration in between the teachers and the students, and kind of discuss together that what are the essential competencies for the futures, what do we need, what is really some worth of learning and why, and what type of competencies are needed in the future, and focus on these. And to our understanding, we need even more holistic approach, and this kind of transformative ability to create, to shape your environment for yourselves, your mates, and the globe's well-being and sustainability. And these are the things that we have already started to discuss, that what has this situation, this kind of pandemic taught us is that the uncertainty of the future, and then what is that, how do we reflect that in our education. And lastly, what we have been discussing a lot is how to tell everyone, all the teachers, all the principals, please just to aspirate, just to recover from this very stressful year. And as Sam said, hopefully we get rid of this pandemic and we can go back to normal. And the first thing is just to sit down, rest, build up your strength. We need also time for recovery, not only to develop things. So that's something that we are looking forward to.
Yeah, absolutely. I think everyone's looking forward to that, just that time for rest and just some quiet reflection, and not just enjoy the other things in your life besides what you do day to day. Thanks so much for that. Carmen.
Yeah, I'll try to keep it short. I think that one of the things that's kind of interesting is that in Chile, we have a very high-stake testing system. Schools can get closed after repeated failure. Test scores are a marketing tool because we have a very strong market-driven system and so forth. So what's interesting is that because of the pandemic and the social unrest, there's no high-stakes testing anymore. So something that had been really fought by a lot of people now is a reality. But the question is, if we don't have any standardized testing, how are we tracking students' learning and progress? And a lot of the testing data is also used for policy and resource allocation. So that's a question I think that we need to figure out is, if we don't have tests, what can we replace that with in order to get the kinds of information that will support the school? The other thing that I think it's interesting is that one of the complaints that we hear over and over again from school people is that the curriculum, we have a national curriculum framework, so everybody has to cover the same curriculum, is excessive. So there are not enough hours in the school day to really get through the whole curriculum. Well, now the policy is curriculum prioritization. So the government has decided of the curriculum, these are the things that you really need to focus on. Then the question is, are we going to continue with this less is more mentality, or will the government expect teachers to go back and teach everything instead of this prioritized curriculum? So I think the question that I have is really how many of these changes, like getting rid of standardized assessment or curriculum prioritization, will remain after we go back to hopefully not normal, because normal wasn't good in Chile. It was very unequal and very stressful. So we'll figure out a way of going back to something better, hopefully. I think what should continue is the notion of greater flexibility and more site-based decision making, but that's also controversial here because some, particularly the teachers union, complains that when the ministry say, well, it's really up to each school to decide how to address the going back, teachers union say, well, you're not taking on your responsibility because you're using the logic of entrepreneurship. It's up to you what you want to do, and there should be a policy about it. And so people are wanting policies and also wanting flexibility. So there's a tension there. And what I think will have to be completely new is really, as my colleagues from Ghana and Finland have said, is really rethink what does it mean to provide a holistic education to children. We have spent so much time on testing and on academics, and now we realize that that's really not what's going to make people happy, students happy in school, and we need to broaden our understanding of quality education, I think.
Yeah, thanks so much. You're right about that, and it's exciting to hear what really could happen next based on our experiences that we've all shared with each other and had in our communities. So thank you. We'll move on to our next question, and this is really for you to expand a little bit more on those research studies that have come about due to COVID in your particular regions, and how might some of these policy implications, what might there be based on what we found out, and how are you thinking about preparing students to be ready for life after high school? So let's not forget about that period of time as well. During this question, we're going to start with Mario.
Thank you. Yes, actually, I already reflected a bit this what might be some policy implication, and definitely there has been a national-wide discussion about how we are ensuring the equality and specifically equity in our education after these exceptional times, and what should be the focus. And currently there is ongoing a big research program, and we are waiting for the results where the Ministry of Education has ordered a result and follow-up research about what really happened at schools and how did our teachers and principals and students and parents experience it, and what are the kind of what should be done, what are the results, what should be done, and where to focus. And as said, the kind of long-term effects are still to come. I would say that we don't know exactly what happened at home. And one of our psychologist and researcher wrote an article, for example, that for the upper secondary young ones, students, so to build up their identity in the healthy way, so they need reflection from their age mates, so from other teenagers. And now these kids that are our kind of next generation of our adults and active players in the society, they have this odd experience of being isolated from this kind of essential social interaction that is also needed to build up a healthy identity. And of course we don't have a crystal ball, so we can't kind of predict our future, but we can already think of that we must follow up very closely and what happens amongst this age group, and also to think of how to help these pupils and how to support their growth. So it's very much focusing on the social and mental health well-being. I'm not concerned about the academics. You can read that, but I think the concern where our policy maker is also looking at is how to cope with that. And then thinking of the other aspect of this question, that how we're thinking of preparing our students to be ready for life after high school. So that I already touched a bit, that we are actually in the phase of implementing our new high school curriculum next fall, and the approach is much more holistic than the previous or the current one. And this is definitely something that we are focusing on. We are thinking of the competencies that are needed in the future, and what type of competencies are needed. And based on the research already done before COVID, so we know that, for example, social and emotional learning is essential skill, not only for the as a community skills or the societal skills, but also when it comes to labor market. We need people who have this kind of genetic understanding, ability to think in the flexible way, to cross the borders of different sciences or disciplinary. So that's something that we are aiming at, and also to think of how to construct new ways of teaching and learning to help our students to bloom and success in the future. So that's very much on our table currently.
Yeah, you certainly have a full plate for sure. We all seem to do that. Carmen, what can you share with us about what's happening in Chile for that?
Well, in terms of policy, our government is extremely concerned with students that have dropped out. We had, worked very hard as a country to really reduce the number of kids that were out of school, and now we see that all the work has been sort of pushed back, and now we're sort of where we were 5 years ago. So it's a very high priority in our policy environment. Also, I think that there is an opportunity here to really think about work-life balance among teachers. In Chile, we've just changed policy, so now teachers are having some contract time to prepare lessons, but until 3 or 4 years ago, everything that they had to do was outside of their contract hours in terms of lesson preparation and so forth. So I think that what we're finding is that probably this has brought the attention to how much work is involved in teaching, that it's done outside of the contract hours, and so now, as teachers have had to juggle family responsibilities with work responsibilities simultaneously. I think there's an opportunity to really go back and, as a country, think about sort of work-life balance in the lives of teachers and principals. I think that in terms of the preparation for life after high school, we're having an issue in terms of vet students, because we have a tract of students that go to the university and they continue to go, and that sort of keeps going. I mean, now universities have to do more of remedial work. But the question is with our students in vocational technical training that have not been able to have sort of the practicum and all their education goes around that. So that has been an issue in terms of getting them ready for life after high school. And one of the things that I don't know if in your countries has happened, but one of the concerns that we have that in Chile, young people are really not in the mood to follow lockdown measures. So one of the questions that people are asking is why is this younger generation not disciplined enough to stay home? So we still continue to have people having parties and so forth and so forth. So there is a concern about how do we prepare students for greater social responsibility? Because I think what the pandemic is calling is that we all behave in social responsible ways, and we're finding that too many young people are continuing the party, are not, doing the things that need to be done to protect the wider community. So I think there's also a concern about, in this concept of well-being is what kind of social responsibility are we developing in our young people, and how we can better, because that's going to be definitely a life skill in terms of we don't all learn to collaborate and so forth. And I just wanted to say something about sort of my previous research on the parent survey. What was interesting about that survey is that was a community effort, because the community, the school put together parents and teachers and other social organizations, and they developed what they call a social table. And it was a table that wanted to know what parents were experiencing. So I think the idea of collaborating across sectors and really helping as a researcher, I mean, I was supporting them with my expertise, but it was really they were driving the questions and the information. And now that I participate in another community as a social researcher, supporting what they want to do. And again, we're going to be doing another survey because we want to know, okay, year after, what's going on and what are the new needs. So I really think that we need to, as researchers, we need to support the social organizations that have the responsibility, but not necessarily have the skills to be able to guide their decision making. So I just wanted to make that comment about my previous study, that I think it's important because it speaks to the idea of collaboration across sectors to really address the needs of our communities.
All right, that's great. Gosh, Carmen, thank you. That social responsibility is certainly going to be at the forefront, I think, for all of our students coming forward. Thank you for that. Sam, I'm going to move on to you in just a second. We're coming down to our last 15 minutes or so. So I'm going to let Sam, of course, respond to this question, and then if our panelists can begin to think about our next question and our response as we wrap this up as well. Sam, talk about some of the research that's been happening in your area.
Okay, let me quickly share. I think you have to stop sharing the screen so I can share just 2 slides with us. Okay, I hope my screen is visible to everybody.
We can see it.
Okay, so I'll just, for brevity of time, I'll just look at these few items that I picked in terms of research. So 2020, I like this work. I'm not against online teaching, but what about us, ICT in Ghana post-COVID-19, by a former student? And I just picked some of the key items. So I'll just run through so we all see. I'll share the slides later on. So some of the key items that he brought, I mean, the themes from his work are effectiveness of online course, then the barriers. The crux of the work was with the barriers. You know, there were barrage of barriers with some of the things that we have all shared here in terms of knowledge, lack of knowledge in the use of technology, and then the gaps in ICT integration. So at the end of the day, he muted that online learning in Ghana is not effective enough, and it's also fraught with a lot of challenges. So we are talking about COVID-19, and these are some of the issues. Then Mohammed, this is actually a documentary for Al Jazeera, but it's so distractive. I picked it around the time she wrote it. We didn't have much research in the milieu. That was also in March 2019. And this is what a student, a student in one of our universities said. I only have confidence in 2 of my lecturers being able to teach online. And then he indicated that half of the population, meaning half of the high school population, not the entire population of Ghana, have access to mobile phones and internet. And then the suggestions was to incorporate social media and other things into the learning. Then I have done this work with my professor and a colleague, academic experience on Zoom fatigue. And that's why in my reading and in my interviews, I realized terms like Zoom bombing. I mean, the kind of things that we are confronted with when we are Zooming or having virtual conferences, now I think people are getting used to. Previously, around this time, you hear the number of, I forgot, I'm muted, while you expect people to talk. You hear the moderator telling people, switch off your mic, mute your videos and all that, and the noise all around. And one thing with virtual streaming is that you concentrate all your energies through the eye. So 1 minute of Zooming is like doing 1 hour of regular things. It's a lot. So these are some of the things academics said: physical, emotional, draining energy, time wasting, but then the positive side is that we've been empowered with digital literacy skills. I told you about BBC and the digital immigrants and all that. Then another one, this is from the students. And they are talking about lecturers or instructors not trained in the virtual space, and so they struggled with the way they did things, data depletion, internet downtime, and direct transposition. All these are issues that came up. So they also called for lecturers to be trained and all that, so that they get smoother sessions. And I also found works of other people, but the findings are virtually pointing to the same issue. So I didn't bring their findings. So these are some works that have been done around this time. There are many others, but I realized that the findings are skewing towards the same arena. And this is one that I did that is very dear to my heart personally. Because if you are talking about equity, working towards attaining the Agenda 2030 Goal 4, I did this work with students with visual impairments. And if you look at the 5 categories that emerge from the qualitative data, when you peg their pre-COVID-19 learning experiences with their coping strategies, you see that nothing really changed for them. Things are still the same. They call themselves the silent minority, because a blind student will tell you, I am online and a lecturer is pointing to the whiteboard or just reading the notes very fast. You can't capture anything. And they indicate that when it comes to preparation towards online learning, their personal preparation outweighed that of the institutional preparation. And therefore, when it comes to their post-COVID-19 learning space, most of them indicated, about 65% indicated that they will want to move back to face-to-face. So these are some interesting studies that have been I've cited and I've been engaged in. And based on that, the policies naturally emanate from these. Number one, I spoke about training, not only for instructors, but also for students. Students actually need to be oriented towards this virtual streaming, because as I said, and as many people agree, with COVID-19, things are not going to return to what we used to do. The world is moving and we need to move with the world. So lecturers, instructors need to be trained over and over again. Students need to be oriented. We need to work with the corporate world to design, to craft bespoke and affordable technology and tools for everybody to be able to use, and policy should cut across for the way and manner in which online learning is being implemented. Because if you speak to individual students and individual instructors, you come to the realization that people are not doing things, things are not mainstream, so students are sometimes lost. You're back to the conventional days. At least there was a curriculum and every school had a way of doing things. There was a certain culture, but now it looks like monitoring online is a bit difficult, so that culture is missing. The students are sometimes disoriented. Now, how do we prepare students for the future? Well, fortunately, I'm one of the people who have previously written against the kind of curriculum that we were running in Ghana, because we seem to be training students who will pass exams and then that will be it. And we had a lot of people in the corporate world lambasting universities that we train students for us, and when they come, they speak all the excellent British English, but when we employ them, performance is low. And it looks like the government heard some of us crying. So right from the basic level, the new curriculum from 2008, they have core competencies that we are supposed to train students. And I'll just mention these core competencies, about 6 or 7 of them. One is creativity and innovation. One is critical thinking and problem solving. Another is communication and collaboration. Then cultural identity and global citizenship. And then personal development and leadership. And then digital literacy. So these are the core values, competencies that our new curriculum expects us to train our students towards. Though there are challenges, but if you're able to get the requisite resources and put our hands and our minds and our hands to it, our students are going to be far better than what we were when we came out of school. Right. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Sam. I certainly appreciate that. We have just a few minutes left in our discussion today, so we'll probably have to do a quick round robin. And I mean quick, probably 10 to 30 seconds, if you could let us know what you believe are some of the key partnerships that are needed to drive the educational change that you envision. And Carmen will go ahead and give you a quick opportunity to respond.
Yeah, well, I addressed that a little bit earlier. One of the things that we also, and this is an example of it, I think we've also created strong partnerships across universities and across countries. I think there's so much we need to learn from each other. So I really value this opportunity, and I think that we need to also work closer with NGOs, with community-based grassroots organizations, universities. So I think we really have an opportunity to rethink how we prioritize education and issues, because in Chile it's always done from the top down. And I think it's an opportunity to start rethinking from the bottom up and thinking from the middle. So that would be my very short answer.
All right, thanks so much. I appreciate that. Sam?
Hello.
We were talking about what partnerships do you believe are needed to drive this educational change? You kind of spoke about it a little bit. Is there anything else that you'd like to share with us?
Yes. First of all, we need to strike a very important partnership with the health services, because if we had really been working with them as educationists, we could have seen the signs coming. The situation wouldn't have exacerbated to the point that we have to lock ourselves and stop schooling. So we need to really work with them. I think Mario was talking about stress a lot, and when we work with them, they'll be able to give us all these psychologists and other people to be able to work on us. And also, we need to work with the corporate world. That one I mentioned, because we live in my milieu, things are costly, and we have a lot of issues, challenges, financial with many people. And therefore, we need bespoke technology, and we need technological tools at affordable prices. I remember the late Kofi Annan, may he rest in peace, indicated that around the globe, they wanted to get computers, laptops or tablets that cost $100 for each student in difficult environments. These are things that we should be working around. And lastly, we also need to work with parents and guardians and community members, because the shift has been so dramatic, but no parent will agree that I need to buy, even the wealthy, they need to understand why they need to buy gadgets for their kids, let alone those who are not well-to-do. So we need to really collaborate with them to understand how they can help financially, and also how they can step in to we in school, teachers, we are in situ parent, we in situ parents, right? So in at home, they should also be in situ teachers, because we are not always there now. We are working virtually, so they should pick up from where we live and then do a lot of the work. So these are the 3 areas of collaboration that I expect.
Thanks so much, Sam. That's such valuable information. Mario, why don't you round this out for us?
Very, very quickly, because my colleagues already mentioned everything. So in my list, there was universities, of course, definitely research, then NGOs, and specifically what we have found. So the migrant NGOs working with the migrant families, social services, I mentioned that several times. Enterprises, we need to develop together new solutions for learning platforms and so on and so on. Families and community, you mentioned, Sam, that's very important. Also, what was probably not yet mentioned is the teachers union. We need them to work with us. And then I believe strongly global networks of educators like today. We need each other to build up the sustainable, successful future for our globe.
That's so true. Thanks so much, Mario. And thank you, Sam and Carmen, for joining us today. And I'd also like to thank our colleagues at the School of Education at the University of Albany, who sponsors edTrends that we're watching today, the Lassinger Center at the University of Florida, along with many of my colleagues at Cognia. So thank you all for joining us today. We really appreciate it.